Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-mulk wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Alladhi khalaqa al-mawta wal hayata liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala wa huwa al-azizul ghafur. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, blessed is He in whose hand is the kingdom, and He is powerful over all things. He is the one who created life and death to test you, to see which of you is best in actions, and He is mighty and powerful. When we have this brief ayat, there's a lot in this that we can take from it. First of all, is a reminder for us about the true nature of the life of this world. And one of the things that when we look at the teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, we see that he is constantly reminding people about two things. One of them is the nature of this world and reminding people not to be involved in worldly behavior. And the other one is constantly reminding them of death. When we look at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we have to realize what was the situation of the Muslim Ummat. A lot of times we just sort of read through this and we take a hadith from one of the Imams and not thinking what is the context, what is the audience, and why is he saying this thing now? Because one of the things about being Shia is that we have an imam in each and every different cycle of the human being's life, meaning the human ummat's life. Because our ummat has a lifespan. It goes up, it goes down. But we have the example of a person who is perfect, living in any particular time, in any particular situation. So we look at the example of Amir al-Mu'mineen when he is in his khilafat, and this is towards the end of his life. He's in his past over 60. It's where you start to typically, people are thinking about their death and what's coming after. And also, it's the Muslim Ummat, many of them, we have to remember, were mostly young men with him. Because Islam was kind of a young religion. The older folks had mostly died off, the Abu Jahals and Abu Lahabs and things like that. That age group had died off. The age group of Amir al-Mu'mineen, those were the ones who had heard about Islam and accepted Islam and stuff, were now like him in their late 60s, early 70s, late 50s. And there was another group now, their children who are now coming up. Now these guys were in their 40s and such like. So we have to look at what was the situation of the people. One of the things that when you look at revolutions in the past, where people change from one system or the other, one of the things that you see happen is what I have called revolution fatigue. Some people, they have a revolution, they change from the old system to the new system. The old system wasn't working, it was out of date, it didn't satisfy the people's needs, so the people overthrow that and they go to a new system. And they say, this time we're going to get everything right. This time we're going to change what we were doing wrong. This time we're going to bring in new leadership. This time we're going to have new ideas. And so they do that. They bring in the new leadership. They bring in the new ideals. And then what happens is many times they fall back into the traps of what had got them in the wrong place in the first place. They become tired. They become tired of fighting and fighting and fighting. And so you have a few holdouts who can remember, usually some of the younger members of that crowd, that they can remember what they were fighting for in the first place. So Amir al-Mu'mineen was one of this younger crowd, that he could still remember clearly what they were fighting for in the first place. And that these people, after their revolution, they had gotten lazy. They had started taking money. They had become taking bribes. They now flipped, and they were now the kings. And it had this culture of being worldly had now seeped into the entire Ummat, from the top to the bottom. People who had been mujahid and brave and fighting for Allah and remembering the Prophet and doing all of this work had now become corrupted. After fighting and fighting and fighting, they got put in charge, and now they got the second test, which is, first you were fighting for justice, but you didn't have the justice. You didn't have the levers of power in your hand. So once they kicked out the old guard, and now they became the old guard, now they were the ones with money and power and everything to now affect the society. So what I'm talking about is the people who were similar to the Talhas and the Zubairs and things like that, who were now close to Amir al-Mu'mineen's age. Now, this entire group had now started competing for money. They had started trying to, rather than see what they could do for Islam as they had done in their younger years, they started seeing, what can Islam do for me? So this is an important step, and it's important for us to realize this was what was going on, not just on an individual level. Sometimes we point out the big names. This person did that and that person did this. But we have to see it on a community level. That as a community, the people had started to see, what can Islam do for me? One time I was having a discussion with someone, and they were saying, well, what difference did it make that Amir al-Mu'mineen became the Khalifa, the first Khalifa, second Khalifa, or third Khalifa? You Shia, you wanted him to be Khalifa, and he became Khalifa. What difference does it make? And I said, the people were looking at the Khilafat as just a temporal position, just like a person in the chair, not as something divine and inspired by Allah. So they were wanting justice, but to get themselves a better spot. They were like, those people were wronging me, not that they were creating injustice in and of itself. So when they put Amir al-Mu'mineen in, they were hoping that he would now, because he was their tribesman, he was their friend, he would now have a buddy system, party bazi and party bazi khuluf for their own benefit. That he would go and start playing favorites, to translate into English, I think is this guy's my friend from way back in the day. This guy supported me 20 years ago. This guy's my cousin. That guy's my friend. And they thought that he would do for what the other people had been doing. And so when he started giving actual justice, the people didn't like it. They said that one of the Amir al-Mu'mineen's cousins who had fought with him, he had been with him in the house of Fatih. Imagine the sawab, imagine the ujr. That everybody left him and he didn't leave. So he came, and now he was one of the big shots. He was from a powerful tribe. He was used to get, when he would come to get his handout, he would get, a huge stack of money. So now he came to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he was with one of his slaves. So he had some slave, I don't know from where, from Africa or from Yemen, somewhere, maybe Iran, I don't know, wherever they got their slaves from. So he comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and everybody in Amir al-Mu'mineen is like, one for you, one for you, one for you, one for you. So he's like, okay, where's my, handout? And he gives one dirham to him, and he gives one to his slave. And he's like, next. And then his friend is shocked. He was like, I supported you at this time. I did this for you at this time. I was did jihad and Badr and Uhud and Hunayn, and you're going to give me one dirham, and 1 dirham for my slave and he's from Africa? How can you do this? Is this justice? He said, no, I didn't see anything from in the book of Allah. If you did all of those things, inshallah, Allah will give you thawab for that. But I didn't see any difference between you and him in the book of Allah. He's a mu'min and you're a mu'min. Not that you're from the Quraysh and you're Sayyid and you're this and you're that. No, you get one, he gets one. He got furious and he started a revolution against him. His own brother came to him, and they had started having the buddy system, and if your brother is gonna come, your brother was the one who supported you, your brother, because if it's his brother, when he was in, Shib Abi Talib, he would be with him, all of this, everything else, his brother is with him. So his brother came to him and said, mashallah, okay, now the good times are gonna roll. The Bani Hashim got their position. Okay, one for you, one for you. He said, no, but you have the big stack of money. He said, okay, all right, you know what? You asked me, I'm going to give you something special. So his brother said, mashallah, really? He came with him to get something special. His brother was blind. So he got a piece of iron from the fire. He said, stick out your hand. He put out his hand and he put the burning iron in his hand. His brother started screaming and yelling, oh my God, I got burnt. What are you trying to kill me? He said, you want me to go to hellfire for you, but you can't even hold this one piece of iron that I just heated with my fire? And so these people started leaving away from him. But it's very interesting. We have a few different ahadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He's talking about, this is from one of his khutbahs, which is very long, but I just took a couple of lines from it. He says, talking about the dunya, he says, Antum mukhtabiruna fiha wa muhasibuna alayha, that you are tried in it and then it is counted against you, that there's going to be an account for it. So the people are just in the dunya enjoying it as if there's no account in it, that any benefit that you get, Allah's going to ask you, okay, what did you do with this benefit? You had wives, okay, what did you do with them? How did you treat them? You had children, what did you do? How did you treat them? You had a good job, what did you do? You were smart, what did you do? You were handsome, what did you do? Not that, oh, I made myself smart, I made myself handsome, I made myself have a good education. Okay, you were smart, okay, mashallah. You worked hard, okay, mashallah. But who gave you the strength? Who gave you the parents to teach you to work hard? Allah gave all of these things to you, and then Allah is going to ask you, each and every one of the ni'mas that He gave you, He's going to ask you, what did you do with it? That He says that, فَإِنَّ الدُّنْيَا رَنَقٌ مَشْرَبُهَا رِدَهُ مَشْرَعُهَا, that He described it similar to like a water hole. He said that it's like a muddy water hole and dirty to drink. And it's interesting because why is He describing it that way? I mean, the dunya, Allah created a beautiful world for us. But His next line kind of shows why He's describing it in that way. He's describing it in a bad way. First of all, this is really accurate. One of the things that you see when you have these watering holes, right? If you ever, I don't know if anybody's ever been around sheep or cows or something like that. Maybe when you're doing the zip or something. That the water is something that you need for your life, right? But when the animals all come to it, they begin to walk in it and it becomes mixed with everything else. So you have to be very careful about how you use it, and you only want to just take just what you need, or else you might get sick. If you just drink from anywhere and everywhere, you can really hurt yourself. So the Imam is actually using a pretty accurate, statement. Sometimes we think it sounds like exaggeration, but no, it's actually very, very daqiq. It's very precise. That it's needed, it's necessary, it keeps you alive, it keeps your animals alive, but you can't just go into it willy-nilly. You have to be careful about where you're drinking and what you're doing and where you're doing. Just like the world. We can't just drink anything and everything or eat anything and everything. I can only eat a limited amount. What's mine, what I've gotten with halal. Or another brother, he says, mashallah, come sit with me. I have some chai. We can drink that together. But he gives me one chai. Can I go into his house and take another one? No, there's very limited to what we can do. And we take what Allah has given us. We can't just do anything and everything. Even in our work, we can't just work any job and every job. We have to be careful. Is this one halal? Is this one haram? I'm going to feed myself with this. And what will be the effect of that? But then he says the next part, Yunikum mandaruha, that it has a beautiful appearance. Wa yubiqu makhbaraha, that it has a beautiful appearance and that it has a destructive inside. So we see the world, but the thing that's beautiful, but if you aren't careful with it, you can now take this dangerous thing into yourself and then harm yourself. That we have ayat from the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And this very funny, this last line gets mentioned a few times in different ayat. It's Ya ayyuhan nas, udhkuru ni'matallahi alaykum. Hal min khaliq ghayrullah, yarzuqukum minas sama'i wal ard, la ilaha illa huwa, fa anna tu'fakun. That, O you men, O mankind, remember the favors of Allah upon you. Is there a creator besides Allah? He gives you your sustenance from the skies and from the earth. There is no God but He. And how are you then led astray? So, Allah's now calling something to attention. One of the things is that in the system of debate, when I'm going to argue with someone, I never ask a question unless I know the answer already, and I know that they know the answer, and they know that there's no other logical way that they can argue this point. So when Allah says something that, remember the favor that Allah has given you, and then, is there a creator besides Allah? So Allah knows that a person has to answer this, and the answer has to be yes. Even though there's some people who they claim to be atheists. I remember it was funny. One time they took a test, and they got all of the people who were religious, and they got all the people who were, atheists, and they said, what's your degree of certainty? And so the people, if you're atheist, you should have certainty that there is no God, correct? If you're atheist. They tested them and they said 98% were some degree of sure, not sure, something like that. They said 2% were sure there was a God. The person is claiming to be an atheist, but he was sure there was a God. So meaning that our brains, our minds are not really set up to have that other belief. It's like trying to believe, it's like trying to stare into the sun. Your eyes are not really created to be able to do that. So a person, he can say that, he can claim that, but in his heart, he knows that it's wrong. And one of the ways that you can tell is, a few years ago, the Pope, he said that if an atheist lives a righteous and good life, then the atheist can go to heaven, and then the atheists all got happy. I'm like, why would you get happy? If you don't believe in it, it's all a bunch of nonsense. What are you getting happy for? It's like if someone comes to you and says, you know what, if you, mashallah, you're a really good boy, then you're going to get something from Santa Claus for Christmas. You're not going to get happy because there's someone coming. But it shows that they know that, no, there is a heaven and there is a hell and there is a God, that they're maybe presenting or pausing, or I don't like my lot in life, and they, making excuses is what they're doing. But like a person throwing a fit for his parents. They sometimes they had the children, he asked his mom for candy. He's like, give me some candy. And the mom says, no, I'm going to hold my breath until you give me candy. You can't actually, like threatening suicide or something. You can't actually hold your breath. You're going to fall asleep and you'll start breathing. But it's like a meaningless threat. So it's, a person claiming to be atheist is a meaningless threat. He doesn't really believe it. They had one of them, he was really famous for being an atheist. And he was saying all kind of, trash talking religion and this, that, and the other. And so he got cancer. And they said, you're going to die now. Are you a little bit worried? Then he was like, well, I don't know. When that time comes, I can't guarantee that maybe in my, my pains of death, I might say something that I don't really believe. No, he was because he knew in his heart, he believed in God. And he was that once there was now he was just being arrogant because a camera was there in front of him. And so he couldn't tear up his legacy. But he knew that once it came down to it and he saw the angel of death in front of him, he was he would crack. So it's just a big show. So Allah is reminding them of this. That is there a creator besides Allah? They know that there's not. They know that they got so many blessings from Him. They know that Allah has given them all of these bounties and that there is no God but He. The people know that. It's funny, they used to be polytheist, but at the same time, they believed in Allah and knew that the idols were just rocks, which is why they would get so angry and defend them and this, that, and the other, because they knew it was nonsense. So then Allah says ask the question after that. First He asked the first question, is there a God besides Allah? Then He says what His blessings are, how He takes care of us. And then He says this line, which is, and how are you then turned away? So if you know that Allah is out there, you know that your blessings are from Him, you know that you can't get beyond what Allah has given you, then how are you now? Lost. How are you now that, tell me about Amir. He knew he was a good friend of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he said, tell me about Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he said, leave me this question. Don't ask me this type of question. Because he knew the politics that Muawiyah would kill people or something. But Muawiyah was actually curious. So he kept pressing him. And so he said, do you give me safety? So Muawiyah said, yes, you have safety to describe him. And then he said a lot of things about him, but one of the things he said, I used to see him in the corner of the masjid, crying like a man who was bitten by a snake. And he used to be saying, telling the world, he said, Gharu ghairi, like deceive someone besides other than me. That I've divorced you 3 times, that there's no coming back. So it's very interesting that Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Sayyid al-Uqala, the most knowledgeable and wise person ever, was very, very cautious and didn't want to have anything to do with hubb ad-dunya. That he was like, the only reason I care about even this, one time he was describing the Khilafat, he said, I don't care any more about this than the sneezing of a goat. He said, except that it's just to do amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. Just to put the justice in order, he needed the position. But unlike the other people, they're enjoying the maqam and everybody's coming and praising them and doing this. He didn't care. He could be just as easy in his little farm, taking care of his family, or he could be doing just his taklif. This sort of maqam, this sort of position, is just to do your taklif with it, which is also something which we need to emphasize upon ourselves, which is to do our duty in the positions that we have. Sometimes people forget to do that. Meaning, like, if Allah has given you, let's say, the position in a family of a father, you have a duty to your children and to your wives of doing amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar and setting a good example. It's not an option. It's a duty. If you're looking towards, let's say, if I'm looking towards my mother, then I'm going to be her son. I still have a duty and a taklif in this world that I'm supposed to do, that I'm going to be asked about, that I'm going to be tested about. I have responsibilities. I have responsibilities to my brother Mu'min. We have all of these responsibilities that if you get truly busy in discharging your duties, you don't really have time to be thinking about all of these other things. And then maqam becomes just another duty like any other one. So that you'll see that they'll say, well, that it's not power hungry if a person is seeking the rightful position to do amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. So you have like Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, that he asked to be put in charge of the khaza'in of Misr. He asked to be put me in charge of these depots for the country. Why? Not because he wanted to be Aziz and he wanted to show off. No, to actually do justice with them and sort the people out and give everybody their right. So, please give a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The thing that we're needing to avoid, and we're looking at this dunya, is sometimes people just think of just the things which are haram. But what we need to do is looking out for, a person can be active in the dunya. He can make money. But there's a difference between being active in the dunya and using it as a tool, and like Amir al-Mu'mineen sitting in the chair of the Khilafat to use as a tool to get him into paradise, and a person having love for the dunya itself. Meaning, one person wants the chair because he wants to get to paradise with it. Another one, maybe he wants praise. He likes everybody coming to him. Another one, he wants to do the favors for his family. Another person, he just likes ordering people around. Another person, maybe he has like self-esteem issues. So you see that people might do the same thing on the surface, but the goals behind it are different. Another person, he might have a position and a responsibility and not do it for the dunya. You know, he could, let's say maybe the masjid is needing somebody to help. It can be wajib kifai, the Muslims need this. You have time. But no, he would rather sit around and hang out and do nothing. You know? So like the dunya is not always the same for every person. Like sometimes a person can become addicted to wasting time. Well, I'm not doing haram, but you're wasting a lot of time. You're sitting around doing a lot of nothing. We kind of, inshallah, none of us are into the stuff that we're specifically not allowed to do. Usually once the people at the masjid and stuff like that, they're not really into that. But there's still areas for improvement along this type of stuff. You know, that people can be addicted to praise. They can be addicted to passions. There might be Muslim that they're showing up in the masjid, but their true passion is really just collecting money. Maybe not in a haram way, but they're doing more than what they actually should. Now, it's good to be rich. If a mu'min can be, if a rich mu'min is better than a poor mu'min, you know. He should be working. But if you're just accumulating for its own sake, meaning you're not accumulating, because you see the imams, they would accumulate, but they would spend. They always had something going on, because they say that Imam Zain al-Abidin, please give us salawat, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, that he would buy slaves, teach them, and then for people from all over the world, somebody from Somalia, somebody from North Africa, somebody from Iran, somebody from the Turkish mountains, anywhere and everywhere, he would buy them, teach them for a year, and then free them. And this is one of the ways that tashayyu spread all over the world, because the person goes back to wherever he's from, and they bring love of the Ahlul Bayt with them. But if you think about it, you're like, oh, mashallah, that's really nice. The slave is expensive that he was buying it. And the things like homes and things like that hadn't really been set up. So he was working for his money. Like he would be out there working a garden, they would have regular jobs. They would be doing things to get their income in, and then they would use this money in the way of Allah. They said that Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, that even though he had all of the kingdoms and everything like that in his control, for his own sustenance, he used to make baskets and sell those. He wouldn't just take from the Baytul Mal. He didn't want to get asked about that. Very cautious about that. So the A'imma alayhim as-salam, they were always aware of the danger of the dunya. They were aware of the danger of being distracted by it, getting too much in it, thinking that it was the end-all be-all, not realizing that, wait, no, this is a question. How am I going to be accounted for it? How am I going to be accounted for how I deal with other people? Did I do my duty? Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The other part which I was starting with is also realizing that whatever you have is now in the hands of Allah. We have a duty, which is on the one hand, which is to make our struggle for our rizq. We're not supposed to just sit and lay on the ground and be like, inshallah, Allah will give me food. No, our duty is to struggle, to make effort. But we have to realize that the result is in the hands of Allah. I can't force it to happen. I can't make it happen, which sometimes people start thinking, like I can just drag it out of, Allah by force. No, I do my duty. I look for a job. I find the job. I do my best to keep it. I make my own business. But in the end, whatever I get is not from me, it's from Allah. Whereas this is one of the causes sometimes of arrogance. Some of the people, they get arrogant. So he goes over and he decides, mashallah, I need to go and I have some money or something like that. He starts his little business. Mashallah, Allah gives it barakat. It grows and blesses and it grows and grows and grows. He starts thinking that this is all from me. I'm so smart. And he's like, this other guy was next to me. He was trying and his business failed because he was stupid. And getting this, takabbur. It's important to realize that it's from Allah. That if I was successful, it's from Allah. If I'm not successful, then this is the trial that Allah has given me to deal with. This is where this line that I said, that to try you who is best in actions, not who is most in actions, who is best in actions. That how do you act when you have, Allah knows that a lot of us, if we get this trial of money, we will fail that trial. So maybe sometimes Allah, through His mercy, is like, well, maybe just give you a little bit to deal with because that's all you can really handle. Some people know Allah has given you a lot of that, but maybe He's given you a shortcoming in another place. You have to work at to try to make your actions beautiful in all of those cases. To continue to work and strive and make sure that I'm doing the best in the situation that I have at hand. This is one of the, like, if you're going to take nothing from it, from the lesson of the Ahlul Bayt, is do your duty in the situation that you have at hand. So your duty is going to be a little bit different when you're young. It's going to be a little bit different when you're middle-aged. It's going to be a little bit different when you're old. But you're going to have to do your duty. What is Allah asking from me? What is Allah needing from me at this time? Please give us salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So inshallah, if we work on this in ourselves, work on this recognizing the dunya for what it is, work on the holding fast to the examples of the Imams alayhim as-salam, this will be something which will be, inshallah, successful for us and help us to give us barakat in this life and the next. Allahumma jal hayatana hayata Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa mamatana mamata Muhammadan wa ali Muhammad wa atina fid dunya ziyarata Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa fil akhirat shafaat Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.